Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I am joined by an amazing makeup artist, Tania Russell, today. Tania comes from Los Angeles in the United States, obviously. She has been a makeup artist forever, like 20 years or more. Tania's work spans print, commercials, advertising, TV commercials, and she's worked with celebrities as well. And her work has appeared in Elle, Marie Claire, and on MTV, just to name a few. She's also been educating artists one-on-one for over 10 years now. But even before that, she was a great mentor. And I have always considered Tania to be one of my original mentors, even though this is the first time we have spoken face-to-face, even though it is virtual. I'm here in Brisbane, Australia. Tania is in LA. And, you know, as I say, so we've known one another for a long time. Way back in the days before social media, we used to hang out on this online chat room called Makeup Artist Chat. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was a great place to hang out back in the days before Facebook. So what I really remember Tania helping me with was when I was moving from being solely a bridal artist to more of a commercial artist, editorial, that sort of thing. And Tania always gave me so much great advice on the images that were in my portfolio and the test shoots that I was doing. So that's what I really wanted to have a chat about, Tania, about today. Why our portfolio is so important and how we can kind of use our portfolio to book more of that elusive commercial and editorial work. So thanks so much for joining us today, Tania. I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about how you got started way back when, before social media days, and just a little bit about your career to this point.
All right. Well, hello everyone, and thanks so much for having me. Let's see, I started my career, as mentioned, probably around 20 years ago. Obviously, online or anything of that nature was not really a factor. So how I got started was, it was kind of random, actually. I'm going to be honest. It was a little random. When I was a student at UCLA, I had friends who were in the film department, and I started doing makeup for their little student films. And I wasn't even interested necessarily in being a makeup artist at this point. One of the professors mentioned to me that he thought my makeup was quite good. And I was like, oh, okay. And didn't really think about it at all after that. Graduated, the whole thing. But then a few years after that, a few things happened. I met some professional photographers, and even though they were young in their career journey, they were already quite good. And so I was able to get I was really fortunate and able to get some pretty good shoots really early on before I was even particularly good. And then I also met the woman who would end up mentoring me a lot with regards to, because coming from a LA background, makeup artists tend to be ushered into doing film and commercial because that's so much of what exists. But my love for makeup actually came from photography. So this mentor helped me get into more of that side, more with agencies and more doing how I can make a career out of doing these photo shoots I was doing with photography. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you consider to be the highlight of your career? What's your proudest moment?
There's been a lot, actually. You know, the first time I did a major music video, and actually that makeup team won an award for that. It was Britney Spears' Toxic, and we won an MVPA award, which I have no idea if the MVPA still exists, but it was the Music Video Production Association, so it was a big deal back then. My first national print campaign with Allstate Insurance, and I got the corresponding television commercial. That was a huge deal. First time I did a national TV show and saw my name roll on the credits. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I've been fortunate. I've had some really nice career highlights.
Yeah, yeah, Absolutely. Now, you talk a lot about media makeup. I was just looking through your website, your Makeup to Go website, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. So tell us, what is media makeup?
Well, the terminology has definitely expanded as media has expanded, but basically it used to be what was called makeup for photography. So it was as opposed to bridal or event makeup, personal clients, what have you, it was anything that was going to be done for photography. So film, television, print, etc. And now, of course, we would include all the digital work, all the web work. That's actually become a huge part of most people who work on this side of the business, as opposed to film. The web and internet and e-com and that whole scene also falls under that category.
All right. Yeah, cool. And so that is what your focus is on this media makeup. So
It is.
yeah, let us know, what does an average week look like for you then? And I know, that's like asking how long is a piece of string question, because, I know there's no such thing as average, but, just in general terms.
Well, I'm a freelance makeup artist, so I have never worked, say, for example, for a cosmetics line or worked in retail. I've actually never done that. So for me, the weeks can vary extremely wildly, because I can have a week where I'm shooting every single day with a different client every single day, or I can have a week like this week. Actually, I'm working with e-com, in-house e-com, so I'll be here all week. Or I can have periods where I'm not booked, and then I have to work on the things. You have to work on the work that you need to do behind the scenes to get on set. So it can really jump around. But I would say that I work more often than not now these days. I don't have a whole lot of droughts where I'm not working these days, and most days you can find me on a set somewhere.
Yeah. And I guess, in the market that you're in, because you move between LA and San Francisco a little bit too, don't you?
Yeah, I work up in the Bay Area a lot. The Bay Area has a really strong commercial and advertisement segment. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my good commercial clients are up there. So I'm up there, at least I have been there as much as 1 week out of the month. And then that's not so much what's happening now, but still like probably every couple of months I'm up there.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, you talked about when you're not busy working on the work, and that's kind of really where I'm really interested to hear from you about what that actually means, because obviously a lot of people who are watching this or listening to this are going to be artists who are wanting to move into more of that commercial work. So, I think it's kind of a bit of a momentum thing. Once you start booking the work, you book more and more and more, but it is about how you get your feet in those doors, or your foot in those doors to begin with, and how you kind of keep building on that. And that is something that I think, back when I was starting out, you were so very instrumental in helping me with getting my foot in some doors. Even though you're on the other side of the world, it was that advice that I got from you. So that term, testing up, and doing a lot of tests, and TFP as people tend to call them now. So can you tell us a little bit about where that term came from, test up, and what it really means and why it's so important?
I came up with the phrase test up, not down, because I was seeing a lot of people that were producing a lot of volume of work, but there was no progression in the quality and the caliber of work. There was the tendency to make the same types of mistakes over again, like either poor model choices or bad photography, bad styling, et cetera, et cetera. And so the spirit of the expression is that every single time you do a test, you should look to be better than the last test you did.
Mm.
which is still a standard that I hold myself to this day, because, you know, even though I've been a makeup artist for a long time, a lot of what I work in, well, first of all, the world has changed, and people expect to see new content. So rocking out with the portfolio that you had 10 years ago, no one cares. They want to know what your makeup looks like now. So even if you've been doing this a while, you still need to stay current, which is a very large difference from film and TV makeup. But for a new artist that's getting started, I tend to see they're just aren't testing enough, and so their book and their body of work isn't progressing, and that's why they're not able to get into certain types of jobs, because there's a point where people just really don't care about your enthusiasm and how much you love makeup and this type of thing. They want to see your work. It's just point blank. And I know something that helped me along my journey was really paying attention to the photography. I had a photographer tell me, actually, when I was with one of my first agencies, you know, the agent submitted us all to this one job, and I ended up getting it. And the photographer told me, well, the difference in with the caliber of photography you had in your book, you had better photography than everybody else. So that type of a thing is really, really, really important. So when I'm saying test up, test down, I mean, don't get fixated on your one little element that you're bringing to the team and to the test, but really look at the entire overall picture and the entire project that the team is working on, and make sure that every time you work on something, it's going to take you to another, it's going to take you and your career and your book to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something that I say as well. You know, often I think as makeup artists, we do get very fixated on it's all about the makeup, but of course it's not. That's only one element in the image. You know, you've got to have the best model you can have, the best photography, lighting, styling, hair, everything comes together to create that great image. And if one of those aspects is a little bit off, then your whole image, unfortunately, it doesn't matter how good your makeup is, you know, the whole image, it just kind of
it literally doesn't matter how good your makeup is at that point. No one cares. And I think one thing that young artists need to bear in mind is when you're presenting yourself to decision makers to try and book a job, and by decision makers, I mean photographers, shoot producers, art directors, all those people who could potentially hire you. Makeup is actually one of the last things they're going to look at. Mm-hmm. They don't speak that language. What they're speaking is the language of the image. So guaranteed 275%, they're going to look at the image first. And if you have some busted image that looks like you shot it on your iPhone or whatever, they're already lost interest before they even got to what's happening with the makeup and hair.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important point too, I think, because what I find is a lot of artists now are getting caught up in this whole Instagram world, where I'm not sure about in your market, but definitely the market here in Australia, even though we haven't had likes on our photos now on Instagram for a few months, and I believe that's happening in the States soon. You're going to lose
it's starting to roll out.
Yeah. So we've had that for a few months now. So even though we don't have that, the images, I mean, we can see it through our insights. So we do know it just doesn't display on the actual image there. But what I find is that the images that do perform better on Instagram in terms of getting likes and comments and better engagement are those behind the scenes iPhone photos. Is it the same over there in LA?
I mean, I think so. You know, I know for speaking for myself and the types of things that I post, people do like to see, you know, behind the scenes of what I'm working on. Mm-hmm. I think also too, one of the dynamics that's come up in Instagram is that stories is actually much more of a driving force than the actual feed is nowadays. Yeah. So what I'll put on my feed is actually really different than what I'll put in my story. So on my feed, I have all my pretty finished pictures and what have you. But in my stories, all that kind of behind the scenes stuff completely blows up. People love that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good point and a really good distinction, I think, to make between the stories and the actual feed, the posts. The other distinction I think that is important is the distinction between social media and your actual portfolio. So whether that be a website or, I don't know, do you still use a physical book? I know I haven't shown anyone mine for, gosh, at least 5 years now.
Yeah, it doesn't come up often. When it does come up, though, people really like it. I think it depends on what you're doing. I'm about to, I've been working with a few agencies non-exclusive, and so I've had some meetings to kind of go exclusive. And on both times, I've taken a book in with me, a physical book, and both times they absolutely loved it. They loved seeing a book. They loved seeing the printed images. It really made a favorable impression on them. It was great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, for jobs, it doesn't. Yeah, I haven't shown a physical book for a job booking in goodness even knows how long.
Mm.
But
So,
I do think.
sorry,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, I do think in general, what I will tend to show in social media is quite a bit different than what I will pare down into my portfolio presentation, whether it's online or physical.
Yeah, yeah. So with that portfolio, whether it's a website or, you know, whatever method you've got of showing that to your clients, talk about why that is so important and the work there. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the photography.
Yeah, so the portfolio book really is still, then by portfolio again, I mean either a physical book or a website or what have you. It's still really the crux of your presentation as a professional.
Mm.
Um, so for example, for a makeup artist, it's important. In fact, I'm going to take that back. I was going to say for a makeup artist, but really for any creative professional, including makeup artists, it's important for your portfolio to tell people who you are as an artist. So it's one of the reasons that a social media feed can be different from a book is because a social media feed can show anything. Like I'll put pictures on my social media feed that I know for a fact will never go anywhere near my book. And there's a lot of variables for that, like, you know, the type of clientele you book or the clientele you want to book, you know, etc. So you want your portfolio book to really be consistent. And by consistent, I don't mean to show the same thing over and over again. I mean far from, actually, because really it's important for an artist to show a range. But consistent being the caliber of work, the caliber of photography, the caliber of the team and the talent that you're working with, show the client, it tells the client one way or the other, good or bad, where you are in your artistry and what kind of artist you are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Yeah. And obviously, you know, a big important part of getting that portfolio to that point is through testing. So let's have a bit of a chat about that. How do you feel that testing is that, or how do you see that progression from testing to actually getting paid work? Because that's one of the most common questions I get. And I think a lot of people think that it's going to happen overnight, but you know, what I always tell them is it's a marathon, not a sprint. So talk to me a little bit about that progression from being a new artist and doing a lot of tests to actually starting to book paid commercial jobs.
Right. So I taught privately one-on-one for a long time, but I also taught in two schools. I taught in a school in LA and I taught in a school in San Francisco. And what I would tell my students is from the time they graduated, excuse me, from the time they graduated, they could look at it in like 6-month clumps. So in the first 6 months that you're starting out, whether you went to school or you're going DIY or whatever the situation is, in your first 6 months, you just need to get on the board. You just need to meet some people and start taking some pictures, and don't let perfect become the enemy of good, as that whole expression goes. Just get some pictures that can show someone an idea of what you can possibly do. Because I like to show, I have always shown my students my old tests and the tests that got me going. And they were not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that is one of the problems with social media, with all this filtering and all this, just all the things that they do. That's actually not what people who ultimately are going to hire you want to see. So just get out there, start working with teams, and get some type of pictures going that can show people what you can do. That way, in the next 6 months, so from 6 months to a year, you can start honing down and start being a little bit pickier about, okay, the models, and I want a certain level of styling, and I want to, say I was just working with random photographers. Well, now maybe I can start approaching some art schools and photography schools and start shooting with those students, because that's one of the big tricks that nobody talks about anymore. Is those people have to they have to create a portfolio in order to graduate. At least the schools here in Los Angeles and in America,
same here.
So the photography students, that's the best kept secret in the business. They have to do it in order to graduate. So those are people that you want to hook up with. So in that next 6 to 12 months, you can really hone down and start getting a presentable book that then you can start showing directly to modeling agencies, smaller advertising agencies that look directly, as opposed to going through, hair, makeup, wardrobe, photography agents, things of that nature. So it's really just a matter of getting out there and shooting, though, to get the ball rolling, because pictures on yourself do not get it done. They just don't in this world. Pictures on your friend with an iPhone do not get it done. You need professional images that can at least give someone who may want to work with you, or someone who may want to hire you, an inkling into, yes, this person can do this, yes, this person can work with the team, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, look, that advice still holds true. It's the advice that I got from you all those years ago. We're talking kind of 2005, 2010, when I first moved to Brisbane. And that was my big goal. It's like, I don't want to work every weekend on weddings. I want to spend weekends with my young kids. I want to be doing this commercial type work. How do I make that transition? So, that advice definitely worked for me. But I really do believe that it's still valid advice, and that it still does hold true today. But I think the thing is that a lot of, particularly younger people, get very caught up in this Instagram. And it's, and I think that's in some ways it's a great resource that we have, but I think in some ways it does tend to hold artists back, particularly if they want to go out and work in this commercial field. Because in my experience, a lot of really busy, really good commercial artists actually don't have huge social media followings on Instagram. And I often talk about there's an artist here in our market who probably does most of the work. Actually, her name's Tania as well, surprisingly. And I think she's got less than 1,000 followers on Instagram. So, like I'm sitting there on under 3,000. So, you don't need to have 100,000 followers to be working consistently in the commercial field.
Yeah, the one really has nothing to do with the other, actually. I mean, every now and again, I might get somebody who saw something that I posted and contacted me that way. But for the most part, the people who are hiring for, production, print jobs, what have you, they're not really sourcing talent on Instagram.
No. Yeah.
So it's, like my follower count on my artist account generally hovers around, well, no, I recently went up to 1,300.
Woo!
But I've never, I mean, I don't put the amount of effort necessary into trying to build a follower account, because I know that those aren't the people who are going to hire me. So it's not
Exactly. Yeah.
material to what I'm doing.
Yeah. So where would you say that most of your work comes from? Is it word of mouth? Is it through your agency? Do you advertise at all?
I think nowadays it's largely through word of mouth or through an agent. I still do an active level of promotion and marketing, and I kind of still do it the old-fashioned way. And I'm noticing that people are taking it. They're enjoying getting, say, a promo card instead of email 5,1,297. So I still do certain things the very old-fashioned way, and when I do that, I do very targeted. I don't try and blanket and contact everybody on the planet. It's a specific client or a specific photographer or what have you that I've had my eye on for a while, that I've built a specific plan to contact them. Otherwise, I'm mostly through word of mouth or through an agent.
Awesome. All right. Look, I think that's, everything that you've said is such fantastic information. And I think, I think you've really kind of hit the nail on the head there, particularly talking about those 6-month blocks. I remember when I was starting out, that what was generally the outline then was it takes around 2 years to become established. Do you think that's still the case?
I think, in the social media era, you have to acknowledge the fact that somebody could hit a fly ball and hit one out of the park and get there really quickly. However, again, looking at my students, it's really been fascinating to me to come as an artist who came from my era, which was a vastly different era. And in watching my students and how they were approaching their careers, I have 2 that are doing particularly exceptionally well. One of whom is working with Alicia Keys now, like that level of doing well. And but I still see these kinds of old-fashioned techniques and old-fashioned methods still being the case. And so in that particular artist's case, it took I think it was about a year after she finished school that she got her first major commercial. And then maybe a year after that, she decided that she really wanted to double down and focus on fashion. And so she actually did the other thing I tell people, that if you want to do fashion, you have to go where fashion is. And so she spent a lot of time in New York and Milan and working under those artists and doing what was necessary to work in that field. And so now she's about maybe 6 years into her career, 6 or 7 now. And she's really doing well and established herself as a senior artist in her own right. But it's not quick. This fantasy that we're gonna do whatever in like 3 months because we put a few pictures up on Instagram is by and large. I mean, I'm not saying it never happens. Okay, maybe it happens with one person, but in the real world, for the most part, that's a fantasy. It's going to take a couple of years to get yourself really get a solid foot in the door. And then in my experience, really people start to hit their sweet spot between like 5 and 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true too. And so just touching on something that we haven't really talked about, and what I kind of call the forgotten step to success, is assisting. How important do you think assisting is, like assisting an established artist to becoming successful in your own right?
It truly depends on what segment of the industry you want to work in. Like, for example, my student that I mentioned that is doing the fashion thing and is now working with Alicia Keys, absolutely 279% would never have gotten there if she had an assistant. It doesn't exist. You can't skip that step in fashion, period, end of story. Like Mark Carrasquillo and Linda Cantello and all these people that are at the top of the top are all still alive and working and not planning on just Ray Morris. They're not just going to abandon ship and give you their clients. They're all still there. So you have to work your way through the ranks in that field, period. Celebrity, big time. You have to, all of those established artists are still there. So certainly aspects of the industry, I try to impress upon people that you aren't doing it if you don't assist. It's not going to happen. You're not going to meet the right people. You're going to need an artist to put you on, or you're going to need trickle down. Trickle down is it's a hidden element in the industry, but it's very real and it's very important. I have benefited from the trickle down.
Mm-hmm.
So trickle down basically is, say, a client contacts an agency and they're like, hey, we have this job, this, that, the other, but the budget is XYZ. Well, Sharon Baltz, say, for example, isn't available, but we have this girl, Tania, let me show you her book.
Yeah.
All right. That type of thing is crucial. And you can't benefit from that type of thing if nobody knows who you are. That's why it's so important to be out there and to get people, to get to know people and expand your network and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I do think that the everybody is an expert mentality in the social media makeup realm is really doing a lot of artists a disservice. You will learn so much from working with a senior artist, and you will, and they are the people that have the potential to absolutely put you on in a way that you, in all likelihood, would not reach yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. Yeah. Alrighty. So I'm going to turn over now to ask the people who are watching live if they've got any questions. I know there is often a little bit of a delay. So those of you who are on the Facebook Live, if you do have any questions for Tania, pop them into the comments box now and I can come back and ask her. I know we do have a couple of people who are watching live. So yes, okay, some great questions here though. So the first one is, what single piece of advice do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out, or that you would tell your younger self now?
It's going to sound weird, but to forget about hairstyling.
Wow.
I think one of the shenanigans that's happened in the industry is forcing everybody to be a combo artist. You know, and this is controversial because there's lots of jobs where they require you to do both or what have you. I think for me, my strength has always been as a beauty makeup artist, and I would have gotten to where I wanted to go faster if I had just said a hard no on doing hair and just doubled down on makeup. And I'm looking at my one student that I mentioned that's working with Alicia Keys, and that's what she did. She absolutely refused to get put in the category of a combo, and it was totally accelerated her career. So to extrapolate, what I mean by that is really double down and focus on what you want to do as an artist, and then do that. Don't let people drag you into doing things saying that you have to do this, that, the other in order to work, because you probably don't. You'll probably be happier in your career and have a more successful career faster if you double down on the parts you really love.
Yeah, interesting. And I know that's probably a little bit dependent on where you're working as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I know definitely in my market, it's so very rare. Like, I cannot think of a commercial job where they have, well, actually there's one client that I have worked with a little bit that will have a separate hair and makeup artist. So, you know,
it's really rare here too. I mean,
yeah,
it's super
okay.
rare.
Yep.
Yeah, but then the right clients find me.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
You know.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting point. Yeah.
And actually, let me back up on that. I have to borrow a line from Marietta Carter Narcisse, who's a master makeup artist and master educator. And 1,000,001 years ago, I took a class with her, and she always told us to don't be afraid to lose a job. And I think that's a lot of it is the fear of, well, if I lose this job, then the world is going to end and no one's ever going to want to hire me again and all this. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Don't be afraid to lose a bad job in order to get a great one. Yeah,
that's great advice. Yeah, excellent. So is there anything that you would like to add, Tania?
I think that a lot of artists nowadays that, you know, they're very earnest, they want to learn their craft, they want to truly know the field, et cetera, et cetera. I think what's good about the social media era, because there's, we could go on about what's bad about the social media era, but what's good about the social media era is having access to artists like yourself, artists like myself, artists like Erica Carr's whole "I'm going to class" thing is amazing. There is real information out there. I think that people need to be cagey and have wisdom about who they take advice from and who they're following, which doesn't mean if you love, a particular influencer who's known for doing really wild, over the top, colorful makeup, that's great. You can draw inspiration from that and might learn some product related information from that. But in terms of building your career, I think it's important to look at, the right sources of information for that, because I do think that the social media realm right now is the wild west. Like anybody can hit your tent and call themselves a makeup expert.
Yeah.
And makeup expert is, what does that even mean? That's just a vague term in and of itself anyway. So is the person an expert in what it is that you're trying to do, really is the real question. So I think my advice for that is to follow a lot of these, less than 1,000 follower artists that are producing amazing work, and just keep your mind open about what professional makeup is, and not get fixated on a style. And yeah, just keep working at it, and keep your mind open and keep learning and keep expanding. I think that is the most important, because I think what's the other thing that bugs me a lot in the social media realm is focus on the business, which I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that I talk about business. I know you do. I think you have to be about your business in order to be a professional. But let's not lose the artistry of being a makeup artist.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's why I focus so much of my thing on portfolio development and on the artistry, because that's ultimately what will open the door for you. One of the things that when people ask me how I first started, in addition to everything I said about testing and what have you, they'll ask, well, how did you know when you could start going for paid jobs? And actually, I developed my book to the point where paid jobs started coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to chase down trying to get paid. This is what I mean by elevating the caliber of the work you're producing. The work I was producing told people this is a professional makeup artist who needs to be paid.
Yeah. That's such that's such an important point. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And tell me, where can people find out more about you and what you do, both as an artist and as an educator?
Sadly, my social media names are not consistent across the board. That was one of those things I wish I had paid more attention to early on, and I was like, oh. So for my artist Instagram, it is Tania D Russell MUA.
Mm-hmm.
But for my education and just talking about the industry and all what have you, that's all under Makeup to Go.
Okay, lovely. I'm going to put links down in the description box. So if you're watching the replay back, the links will be down there so people can click on those links directly. So just before we go, tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you, particularly in terms of your education. So I know you've got the Makeup to Go blog. And have you got kind of plans for that, and what services are you offering in terms of education for makeup artists now?
So I have previously done workshops, and I really enjoyed workshops. I like teaching in the workshop medium because I like smaller class sizes. So I am bringing back my workshop next year. Basically, my focus is called Refining Your Technique. And it's about because I find that most artists are, they're talented and they have good basic skills, but it's very different when you haven't worked in photography before, because when you get those pictures back and you see all these little niggly mistakes and all these things that you've never seen before because they don't show up to the naked eye. So training your eye and training your hand and training your sensibility for what working in makeup for photography is all about is one of my specialties. So the Refining Your Technique workshop will be making a triumphant return in 2020,
Awesome.
as will the blog. And also too, I have an educational series that I'm starting on my Instagram feed. That's been a long time coming, but it was just dependent on getting photography elements together. So I have that together. So all of that will be coming in 2020.
Awesome. Yay. I look forward to seeing that. So yeah, I'll put the links to that down in the description box. So hopefully everyone will come along and follow. And definitely we will be looking forward to the education series that you have next year. And I think there is a link on your website to sign up for your newsletter. So
there is indeed.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll make sure that all those links are there. Alrighty, well, I think that's about it. So again, I just want to say a huge big thank you to Tania for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time out. Are you in the studio at the moment? Is that?
I am indeed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so I know it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so you've just finished work.
Just finished the shoot day today, yep.
Almost 5 o'clock now, where we're just 10 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, thank you so much for being with us, Tania, and we really appreciate your time, and all the very best with everything that's coming in 2020.
Thank you. Thanks so much.